Hello, my needle drops. Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, doing an album review. Arckanum is a black metal project, a Swedish black metal project that has roots in the genre's heyday back in the early 90s. Arckanum put out 3 albums from 95 to 98, but then didn't end up putting out another studio album until 10 years later in 2008 with Anti-Cosmos. Now, with this 2009 album, its title, at first glance, looks a little ridiculous, like an internet joke or something, I guess you could say. But the thing is, these little symbols are called thorns, and they originate from the runic alphabet, where one of them, by themselves, actually means giant. And since there are 11 of these in the album title, and there are 11 tracks on this album, and each one of them starts with one of these thorns, I guess you could loosely translate it into 11 giants, which is a pretty black metal album title. Now, Arckanum on this new LP has a classic black metal sound that is somewhat updated with a new kind of studio sheen on it. But the thing is, even the first studio album of Arckanum isn't all that lo-fi. It sort of seems like studio quality has always been kind of a covenant of this project. There are some moments where this is evidently a one-man project. The drums are kind of slowing down behind the tempo of the rest of the music, but still, the quality, the sound quality, and the production quality of this is pretty frickin' good. The guitars have the perfect amount of distortion on them, kind of creating this wall shrouding the music and this mystique. The bass is distorted and crunchy. The drums range from just punching the speakers to kind of reverberating and leaving a lasting impression on the music. And the vocals themselves are quite possibly one of the best parts of the album. The vocal delivery isn't amazing, but they're mixed extremely well. I feel like putting black metal vocals up too high in the mix can kind of ruin the music entirely, but these vocals are placed perfectly, just low enough so that the guitar distortion and the bass are just blaring over them. They're kind of obscured, but still, they're high enough to pay attention to them if you want to. The abrasiveness of this album, and there is quite a bit of it, may translate to a lot of deja vu for some people, but for those who have sort of trained their ears to the genre of black metal, there is a lot of instantaneous variety on this LP. You don't really need to listen to it over and over and over to kind of differentiate each track from one another. Here's a link to one of my favorite tracks on the LP. If you don't click on that now, that link is going to be at the end of the video, so don't freak out. Anyway, like I said, variety. This thing has quite a bit of it. There's a track that's in 3, there are some mean double bass drum grooves, some really discernible tremolo picking, and the melodies that they lead into are definitely, clearly different from one another. Some really nice chord progressions that make one song clearly different than the other, and there are a few instrumental interludes, and this really brooding, ambient black metal track with this harsh, snowstorm-sounding wind and these dark incantations in the background. Like I said, a lot of different variations. There's even one moment during one of the solos where I recall some shredding happening, just a little bit of shredding, just a tiny little bit, and that kind of shocked me because I'd never really heard any shredding in a black metal solo before. All in all, this thing is a harsh, relentless, icy tundra of misery and aggression and despair. But despite all of that, it's still a black metal album. It's still metal. It is still rock music. So it has to keep up the pace. It has to keep up the momentum. It never loses sight of that momentum or just gets sidetracked to indulge in itself just for the sake of indulging. This thing has a mission. It has a purpose. It is a black metal tank with armor made of impenetrable guitar distortion rolling over its enemies very callously. My one issue with this LP is I would have liked to have seen just a little bit, just a tiny bit more variation among these tracks. Even though they are discernible from one another, there are going to be some moments where, yeah, it's loud, it's harsh, it's distorted. That's pretty much what it's being from beginning to end. I think some slower or more dark ambient or more building moments on this LP would have really broken it up and brought a ton of fantastic variation. That being said, as is what this album is right now, it still understands the black metal formula, executes it masterfully while adding a unique flair that is all its own. I have to give this thing a strong 8 and a very high recommendation for anyone who's into the genre of black metal. Anthony Fantano, Arckanum. Forever.